talking about listening to the Lord. I mean, really listening to the Lord and following through on what he tells us. And I'm going to read you something out of the book of Samuel, 2 Samuel. If you've got your Bible with you, turn with me to 2 Samuel chapter 5. We're going to pick it up in verse 17 and see if you can catch what I call the wait, what moment that comes in here. Because it's all to do with listening to the Lord. Now, when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines went to search for David. And David heard of it and went down to the stronghold. The Philistines also went and deployed themselves in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand?" And the Lord said to David, "Go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into your hand." So David went to Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. And he said, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breakthrough of water." Therefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim, which means master of breakthrough. And they left their images there, and David and his men carried them away. Then the Philistines went up once again and deployed themselves in the valley of Rephaim. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said, "You shall not go up. Circle around behind them and come upon them in front of the mulberry trees. And it shall be when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, then you shall advance quickly. For then the Lord will go out before you to strike the camp of the Philistines." And David did so as the Lord commanded him, and he drove back the Philistines from Geba as far as Gezer. Do you catch the wait, what part?
The one that stood out for me was the footsteps in the tops of the trees.
Yeah. And the fact that David did everything according to what the Lord said. And all we have on this is, and David did so as the Lord commanded him, which tells me that David believed that there were going to be footsteps heard, and when he heard that, they were to attack. So he went around the mulberry trees and waited. And that they did hear footsteps in the treetops, and then David moved. So the Lord gave David an instruction, which would have sounded really weird, or sort of like, yeah, I'll wait for the footsteps to come. Yeah, sure. But the footsteps did happen, and David did move on it. And the other little point here is that the Philistines had already gone into Baal Perazim. David had already beaten them there. So you would think that if you had won one military victory over the same armies in the same location, you should probably be able to go there and do it again. But David didn't do that. Instead, he went back to the Lord and he said, "Shall I go up again?" And God told him this time, "No, don't. Here's what you do instead." This is the result of listening to God. Knowing he will speak to you, knowing that he's got a whole stratagem in place and that you have to carry it out. But the way to carry it out is to do it according to his instructions and to believe that what he is doing is believe that he knows what he's doing and that you just have that part to play, and to wait, to be patient to see that come through. Compare that to Saul, who was the poster boy for shoot first and ask blessings later. You know what I mean? He was the one who would go out, he would do something, and then, or come up with an idea and then ask God to bless it. No, that's not what you do. You don't ask God to bless what you do. You ask God what you should do that he will bless. And we tend to get that all inside out from time to time. I want to tell you about somebody else, because I want to talk about how you know that God is the one who's speaking to you, and how you know that it's not your own thoughts. Consider Gideon. And if you go back into the 7th chapter of the book of Judges, 7th and 8th, you get an idea of what Gideon was doing. Gideon was chosen. He was told by God he was chosen, and he kept saying, "I'm not your guy. I'm not the guy. And God keeps saying, well, yes, you are. And Gideon says, no, I'm not. And God says, yes, you are. And Gideon is so uncertain of himself that he does this. He asks for a sign and he puts out a fleece. And as you know what happens, the ground around it is I may get this reversed because I haven't reread it, but the ground around the fleece is wet and the fleece is dry one night. And he says, that's going to be the sign that you're going to be with me as we go up against the Midians. But then he sort of gets a little bit overcautious again, and he says, no, I'm going to put the fleece down, and if it's wet in the morning and the ground around it is dry, then I'll know. And he keeps saying to God, look, please don't get mad at me for asking you this. And of course, the next morning, he brings out a whole cup of water from the fleece, and all the ground around it was dry. Then he goes up against the Midians. Now, here's where it gets really weird. He's got an army of 32,000 soldiers to go up against the Midians. They're already outnumbered 10 to 1. And God says, you got too many. So God says, okay, find out who is going to turn chicken in battle and send them home. 22,000 soldiers say that they are fearful and they are allowed to go home. So now he's got 10,000. And God says, still too many. Now we've got 300,000 against 10,000. 10,000.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, she is. She's listening. So God says, take them down to the river and have them get a drink. And watch how they do it. You're going to get some who are going to go down on their hands and knees to drink. You're going to get some who are going to lie flat and get a drink. And you're going to get some who will kneel down, cup the water in their hands, and lap it up like a dog. Separate all those three. Keep the ones who will lap it like a dog. That's 300 now going up against the Midians. Now the odds are 1,000 to 1. But here's what happens. These guys who took the drink the way a dog would drink it, they're the ones who are not going to get attacked because they're still in a position where they can defend themselves. They're in what is probably, the third most vulnerable position for a person to be in, and they're getting a drink. So they're alert. They're watching. These guys are smart enough to pull off the stratagem that God has in mind. And this is the thing that involves lanterns and blowing trumpets and basically throwing a scare into the Midians that they all turn against one another and they do all the fighting and killing for Gideon. So to do a thing, he winds up chasing the Midian through the next 3 chapters of the book of Judges. So the fact is, Gideon still listened, and he listened and he carried out what God said. And this is where things get really, really interesting, because God did not want Gideon to win on purely military strength. Too many men, too much armament. Because then if you do that, you're going to give yourself credit for carrying it off. Instead, God sets these things up, not for our own sake, but for his sake, so that he is glorified in anything that he does. Anything that we do glorifies him, not us. We're just the hands and feet. We're just the tools in his toolbox. But you see, he hasn't got hands and feet down here. He's got to use us. So that's why he gives us these specific instructions and tells us how to carry it off. We have to believe that whatever he tells us to do is going to be the right thing to do. But he doesn't drop it on us all at once. And I'm going to use a real life example for this. He gives us little victories here and there. Little by little, he tells us what we do. We see it work. And then he gives us something else. He keeps pulling us along. This is what's known as going from faith to faith, from glory to glory. As he pulls us along. The real life example I'm going to give you, and you're probably sick to death of me talking about it, but it's that Showers project in the downtown east side. Because that was a case where we had no money to do it, but there was a vision that came up. And so little by little, the Lord gave us a little bit more incentive to go ahead, a little message that we were on the right track. To recap, Amelia and I were at a Bible study at the mission this one night. And I'd just gotten back from New York, where I'd seen how this Skid Row mission there had a showers program. And so I said to Amelia, wouldn't it be nice if someone could provide showers for these people? We were on the second floor of a century-old building downtown Vancouver. There was no place we could have put showers. That night, we'd said, yeah, it's a nice idea, but someone else is going to have to do it. That night, Barry, the senior pastor, was leading prayers after the Bible study. And one of his prayers was that godly new tenants would move into one of the ground floor spaces. Well, Amelia saw my eyes come out of their sockets, because that was like sign number one that this was something God had in mind, because that downstairs space, once you cleared out, the rats and the refrigerator with the putrefying food and all of that stuff that was down there, once you got rid of all that, you had a good space to put in 4 shower stalls, one of them for wheelchairs, a space for people to hang out, coffee station, all of that. But that was only the first sign. We still didn't have the money. And little by little, we thought we knew what was going to carry the day. We went to a very wealthy businessman and asked him if he would bankroll the project, and he turned us down flat. But that was our plan. God's plan was to bring people in with little by little. It's money here and there, offers of labor, supplies coming in, the things that we needed gradually coming in. What does that mean for us? And just to close the loop on the shower story, we opened it 4 months later, and it ran for 10 years, 11,000 showers thereabouts. So what does that mean for us? It means that God brings us along little by little as we follow and listen and obey. He gives us a little bit more, just a little incentive to say, yeah, you're on the right track. Take it as a yes. I'm going to bless this for you. Keep going. In Deuteronomy, he tells Moses, chapter 7, I will lead you into the promised land, but I will give it to you little by little. I will not drive everybody out all at once, or else the beasts of the field will rise up against you. In other words, to quote that great evangelist, Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. We can't handle getting all of this blessing dumped into us at once. But we can get it little by little. And as we learn how to handle that, then it gives us a little bit more. We learn how to handle that, it gives us a little bit more and more and more. And gradually we see what he had in mind. And it's probably a whole lot different from when we started out. It's like, what? Yeah. Little. Amelia was just quoting from Jeremiah, I think it is, chapter 40, where God gives the instructions little by little, room by room, cubit by cubit, on how to build the temple. And it's all very exact and it's all very precise. But it's the only thing that we need to do. Don't worry about the big picture. You'll see the big picture eventually as God brings it to pass. So how do you know that you're hearing from God? Well, I mentioned one of them. He might give you an instruction that seems absolutely wacko. It's something that is absolutely beyond anything you could have thought of yourself. That's one thing. He's going to give you an instruction that will benefit other people, often at your expense. If it benefits you at somebody else's expense, chances are it's not from God. It's going to be something that takes you way out of your comfort zone. It's going to be the sort of thing that you really don't. It's like, you're like Gideon. Really? You're calling on me to do this? No, come on. No, not me. You're thinking of the other guy. No, I'm thinking of you. And you're going to go and you're going to do this because you're the one that I picked for. And the other thing is, you know his voice because you're in his word. Jesus says, my sheep know my voice. How do they know his voice? Because they've been listening to him. How do I know Amelia on the phone if I don't have call display? Because I know her voice, because I know what she sounds like. I know what Larry sounds like. If he calls me, I don't have to look at call display. I don't have to look at call display if it's Terry. You know, there's people that I know, or Dawn. It's people that I know, Sandy, that I know their voice. When my daughter calls me, I know her voice. And so you do that by staying in the Word. I haven't done it as much lately, and I'm ashamed of it. However, once I got back into it, when we were away, and I was able to grab those times to myself, sit down and read, and suddenly this whole wait, what experience looking at David, which leapt out of me. I don't know how many times I read that account, and it suddenly hit me. And it's because he gives you those little incentives, a little nugget of something more to learn about him, to find out about him. He gives us that to hold on to remind us we're on the right track when we get back into staying with him. And as a result of that, you know his voice. You know his voice because you heard his voice, and you heard his voice because you sought him. And once you seek him, you'll find him. He says, you will seek me and you will find me. More to the point, he says, I will be found by you. In other words, I want you to find me. Like that song, I want you to want me. But that's what God says. So with that, I just want to encourage us all. Keep seeking, keep listening. Because when you do, he will give you the exact, perfect plan, step by step. And as we follow that plan, you see that what he has for us, whatever it is we're working, we ask him first, we seek him on it, we listen for the response. We don't ask him to bless what we're doing. We ask to do what he will bless. So, Father, I just thank you for this time. Thank you for your word. Thank you for your love. Thank you for the way that you lead us and your desire for us. You are our desire. You keep telling us over and over again that you're for us as well. So we thank you for this time. We thank you for your word. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.